Did you know this podcast is powered by Acast? Acast is the home of podcasting. For creators looking for freedom to grow their listeners and make money too. And creative brands looking for smart ways to advertise. Podcasters and advertisers in the know Acast. It's time you did too. Visit acast.com to find out more. Acast, for the stories.
The bells rang out in Ōtepoti, Dunedin today, and also as far away as Philadelphia, USA, to herald the arrival of a very special traveller to the Otago Peninsula. The first returning endangered northern royal albatross of the season was welcomed at Taiaroa Head. The ecotourism manager at the Otago Peninsula Trust, Honi Langsbury, is on the line. Kia ora, Honi.
Kia ora, Brian, and very accurate reporting there.
Yeah.
You're correct. It's a very special day when we get to ring those bells every year to herald in those that first albatross that returns home to Pukekura.
Well, I'm just amazed that people ring bells in other countries because of the albatross coming back here.
I guess pre-COVID, I know you said we're not going to talk about COVID, we're about
Never
80%
mind.
International visitors coming to the Royal Albatross Centre because it's about the only place in the world where you can easily access a breeding colony of any species of albatross.
Was it just one that came in?
Just one so far.
And how old was this particular albatross? And does it have a name?
Doesn't have a name in the normal sense of things. Every albatross that returns here for the first time as an adult gets a set of coloured bands put on it, and this one has a yellow and a lime band, so it will be referred to as YL for the rest of its life.
YL?
Born in YL, so it may become its name. I was thinking YL's almost a name probably in some countries.
Yeah, it probably is. And when was it born? So the thing that's special is that these are birds that hatched and were chicks. They were reared at Taiaroa Head and now they've come home, right?
Correct. So this is a male that fledged in 2017. So it's about 4 years of age.
Has it been out above open water for 4 years?
It has. So pretty much when they fledge, and we've had the first bird fledge on the same day that one returned, which was Wednesday of last week. We've had 4 or 5 fledge since then. And fledging for a northern royal albatross chick is to stretch its wings out on a really windy day and get a little bit too far off the ground, and they've never learned to land, and that's pretty much fledging for an albatross chick. And they'll spend maybe up to a month on the coast there, kind of learning to fly and taking off the water. And then they make a bit of a right turn and they fly 9,500 kilometres to Chile and spend the next 6 or 8 months in the Humboldt Current feeding off there and never put their feet back on land until YL did 4 years later.
And they're feeding off fish?
They are. So your Humboldt Current's a very rich marine current coming up from Antarctica.
Yep. Full
of all the sorts of food that they're after.
Is it expected that you'll get your first returnings around about now in the early spring?
It is. So we normally have the next year's breeders arriving in the same month as the previous year's chicks are fledging. So it is a really busy time for the Royal Albatross Centre at this time of year. Do
you normally expect a juvenile? Because this one was a juvenile, right? To arrive so early in the spring?
It is. So, this is the first time, and I talked to the dock rangers about this over the last couple of days, and in memory of everyone I've spoken to, never has it been a non-breeding bird be the first bird to return.
Right. What do you make of that?
I'm not wanting to jump to any conclusions, but Dunedin's always been a city of first, and it's not to say that this isn't due to climate change or some of those other changes that are out there in the marine environment, forcing these younger birds maybe a little bit further north in their normal annual cycle around the globe to find food, and came across home and thought, well, maybe I'll just touch down and have a rest.
All right. Now, you've got pretty cold weather forecast. Has it arrived yet?
We've had some really good blows in the last few days, and certainly one of the chicks that has already fledged nest was right next to a cliff. So, we had an interesting debate over morning tea the other morning saying, well, did it just get blown over the cliff? And that was fledging for that particular bird. But we think everything's monitored pretty well around here, and a failed fledging at Pukekura normally has a dock ranger go out and pick that bird up and bring it back up to the colony and gets to have another go on another day. But it's those windy days or those inclement days that we see more fledging than a day with no wind.
Yeah, and there've been big westerlies here, so I'm assuming you've had the same. Now you've got a southerly change. Mind you, the albatross might not mind a southerly change because they're used to the cold, aren't they?
They are. They're a temperate bird, so, really it gets a little bit warm here in Dunedin for albatross sometimes. And, even in my backyard, I live about 3 kilometres from Tairoa Head, out on the end of the peninsula there. And I had a very large, what I thought was stable pine tree blow over in the last few days.
Really?
That same day we had 2 chicks fledged, so they don't mind a bit of wind. We looked at the wind monitor that night on the Port Otago website, and it was over 85 knots, so didn't make the news, but we're used to strong wind down here. If it was that windy in Wellington, it would have been on the first report on all the news media.
We were actually talking to a guest in Dunedin last week on Friday, and I think we lost the line because I think the lines might have been blown down. Well, that was a theory anyway. Then we started getting texts from people in Dunedin saying it's blowing a gale here. But you know what I can hear in the background there, Haone, and that's an electric fence.
Yeah, and I can hear it myself. And, the cell phone coverage isn't that great at my place, so, we went with a landline, and I could hear that ticking myself. So that'll be coming from one of the neighbours' farms here out on the peninsula.
Right. It's not. You don't have an electric fence to keep the pests away from the albatross chicks, do you?
No, we don't, but we actively work in partnership with DOC and the Te Puare Pukekura Management Group to do pest control 24/7.
How many chicks have you got there at the moment then?
So before fledging started on Wednesday, we had 30 chicks at that stage, so it's looking like being the best breeding season ever at Tairoa Head. So I think at this stage, as of this morning, we had 6 chicks that had already fledged. And
when you say fledged, is that they've flown off? That's it, they've gone?
Flown off, yeah. That's fledged
bye-bye
for an albatross chick. And yeah, we normally would see them as a 5 or 6 year old, so even to see a 4-year-old back is a little bit unusual.
Yeah.
But not unheard of.
And YL, what's YL going to do over the next few months?
Likely to have returned back to sea. We'd be surprised if we saw her back on land because we don't normally see what we refer to as teenagers back in here and start that courtship until well after the main breeders have been in and laid their eggs and done those sort of things, which will have happened by about the last week in November. All the eggs will be laid here, and we're expecting something like 35 to 45 nests this season.
Right, so what, is YL already shot through again?
Yep, haven't seen it again at this stage.
Really? So it touched down, you rang the bells, and now it's gone?
That's right, and that's not uncommon, even with breeding pairs. The first of the breeders will come in, and usually the male arrives first. He'll go to their normal nest site and spruce the house up, give it a bit of a paint job, tidy a few things up, rebuild the nest, and when the female arrives, if she doesn't like it, she'll push the nest over the cliff and build her own to her standards. So that's pretty much how things happen out here, how it rolls. And then they'll disappear again until they're ready to lay eggs. So they'll come in and then go away and then come back. Once they've laid their eggs, then we'll see them here for 3 to 4 months. One of those birds always on the nest until the end of the guard stage.
When's egg laying season? Egg
laying starts or is usually completed by end of November and can be as early as beginning of November or mid to late October. It all depends on the seasons.
Do you ring the bells for the eggs or the chicks hatching?
No. The bell ringing is just heralding in the beginning of spring and the beginning of all that breeding activity that happens here in the wildlife capital of New Zealand, with all those marine species that you find out on the Otago Peninsula and across the rest of the coast. So the Mayor's office puts up a special flag saying welcome home, and First Church and the Cathedral all ring their bells. Most of the schools in Dunedin would have been out ringing bells today. It's partly why we give a little bit of time to get all those logistics in place to enable bell ringing to happen, as well as to get that story out to, I suppose, the entire planet, because there's millions of people now that follow the albatross chick on the Royal Cam.
Talk about paparazzi.
Oh, that's right. It's going to be the most famous bird there is. We still haven't had an albatross win Bird of the Year, though, so if you've got some influence with those listeners out there, Northern Royal Albatross is Bird of the Year. I think 2022 will be the year to see that happen.
Well, I'll do my best, Haone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Not a problem. You have a good evening.
You
and
too.
Don't forget the Royal Cam. The last thing I probably want to say is they've just put a GPS tracker on Tiaki, who is the young female bird about to fledge, and people could track her for the next year or two and see where she actually goes. So it's just going to the Royal Cam on the DOC website and click on the tracking map, and you can enjoy following that bird around the planet.
Probably go off to Chile, right?
I expect so. Otherwise, it'll prove me wrong. You won't want to ring me next year.
Oh, well,
somehow I doubt that.
Looking forward to following her, well, footsteps ain't the right words. Her progress, that's the one. Haone, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
No, you have a good evening yourself. Thank you.
That's Haone Langsbury. He's an ecotourism manager from the Otago Peninsula Trust, talking about the arrival of the first albatross to come back after flying out there in the Pacific, mighty Moana, for 4 years. They always mark the return of the first bird of the spring season. Those are birds that were hatched and fledged from the Tāroa Head albatross colony, the only one on the mainland as far as I know, anywhere in the world.
Did you know this podcast is powered by ACAST? ACAST is the home of podcasting. For creators looking for freedom to grow their listeners and make money too. And creative brands looking for smart ways to advertise. Podcasters and advertisers in the know ACAST. It's time you did too. Visit acast.com to find out more. ACAST, for the stories.